Hello everybody, down here in my favorite place in the world, the woods, by the river, cutting wood. Beautiful out, I couldn't be more happy. I wanted to share with you this fantabulous little sharpening system that Stihl had just come out with that takes the place of all of these depth gauges and guide bars, guides, and everything. I was a little uneasy about buying it because I thought it would work just about like any other of the so-called blade sharpeners or saw sharpeners that I had used before. But this thing is the real deal, and I'll show you here. You got what it does is it sets your cutters and your rakers all in one shot. It has your two little guide marks here to keep your angle on your cutter, which is probably 30 or 35 degrees, and it takes a little getting used to, but it really does do the trick. See, now this way here, this rat tail file for 3/8 is in this way, so when you're pulling it this way, the teeth are cutting. And then likewise on the other side, it's the other way, so the teeth cut the other way. And what it's designed for is you can take and run, there's an arrow on here, and it shows you your cutter side right there. You can take and run that across, ideally, and cut your raker and your cutter down, and then turn it and flip it over and cut the other way on the cutter that is the other direction. I don't like to do it that way, just probably because I've done it one side at a time for like 40 years. But this is really, really slick, and it really, really does. See, one of the biggest problems with sharpening a chain, as you probably know, is getting the raker depth set correctly. Too narrow or too shallow, and you can have the sharpest chain in the world, and you can push on the bar as hard as you want, and it'll heat the bar up, and it won't cut worth a darn because the actual tooth can't get into the cut. And then if it's too deep, you're going to have the saw plugging all the time and stopping. It's going to grab, and it's going to be a fight just to keep the saw to run smooth. With this thing, honestly, and even the electronic bench grinders and saw sharpeners, that they don't, this is the smoothest chain that you can sharpen that I found without too much trouble is this right here. I'm truly really happy with it. It's 40 bucks, and it's only for, this one's only for 3/8, so you ultimately, if you had a 325 chain, you'd have to run 325, but it really is worth it, and I'll show you how it works here. So you can see on here the cutters here, how they're not a straight edge, and then if you can see any spot that shines back at you, and it's most likely going to be the tip, that means it's dull. If you can see right there, see how that shines back, and you can see light off of that. So that's how you check to see the sharpness of the cutter, is not only how straight this edge is and how sharp this edge is, but the more it shines back at you. See, this one's more dull than that one and that one, and then this one's not too bad. That one's a little more dull. So this one must have nicked something, whether it be a rock or dirt or something in the wood here. But what you take and do is you take this file and you set, one sets on the raker in front and one sets on the raker behind. And then the rat tail goes into the tooth just like it's supposed to. I'm gonna show you here. So you set line your guide marks up, and you set your file in there, and this guide mark or depth gauge sets on that tooth, and this one sets on that tooth, and this rat tail is cutting this tooth, and then this square file or rectangle file is actually cutting this raker simultaneously as it cuts that and sets this raker the exact depth that it needs to be. The only caveat that I would say is you could take another flat file real carefully and just round this edge a little bit, because you couldn't get into a little bit of chatter if that raker edge is square. And just taking, you know, just knock down that edge a little bit just to make everything run smoother. But it seems to be, I haven't really done it, and it seems to work okay. But what you want to do is make sure that you're always pushing and taking off material on the cutting stroke. And you'll see guys that'll do this and put it back and tell you that they're not applying pressure on the backstroke. It is fine, but I like to actually push in here and keep your hands, you know, where you're not gonna slip and cut them out of the way. And I like to push and try and keep your guide straight, get started a little bit, but I like to take it out every time. And that keeps you from, one, making sure that you get in the habit of not applying pressure on either stroke, but two, it saves on the file a little bit, and it doesn't jam up. You can see how the file fills up with shavings here, and it keeps that from jamming those shavings back in there. And I just like to run it that way. And you can see how each time I come across, you try and keep it straight, and you want to actually, you're going to have to tilt this a little bit, because as you push on that blade, it's going to want to rotate the chain that way, and you want about 10% of an angle on there to begin with. But you see just a few strokes how that edge is becoming straight. We have a straight edge here, and also nothing shining back as us up here. And that right there, I mean, you can see on my finger there, it's sharp. It left a few marks on my finger. So it's doing the job that it's supposed to do. Now, what I would do is push this ahead, stay close to your stump vise or your vise or whatever you have, and I would just go ahead and do this entire side, trying to remember to take the same amount of strokes on each cutter. And the older a chain gets, the harder that is to realize, because not only are they going to wear they're going to hit stuff on certain teeth, and it's totally going to muck them up. And ideally, you know, people say, yeah, I take 6 strokes or whatever on each cutter. Yeah, on a new chain that hasn't been knocked up, yeah, that's good. But here, you're just trying to make it all uniform the best you can, given how old the chain is. As you can see, this cutter here it does not have a lot of life left on it compared to this cutter here, which, you know, isn't. Here's a good example. That one's almost toast. And it just happens. You hit things and it can't stay the same, but it still will cut good. So again, you apply pressure on the forward stroke where you cut, lift it out, you smack it to get some of those shavings out of there, and just get to where you have a nice straight edge, a leading edge on that cutter, nice straight leading edge. And you see right there how I move that? It's still not sharp enough because you can still see the sun shining back at you. So give her a couple more. And now, I don't know if that's showing up on the camera, but you can see how that, you can't see that little line like you can right here. And all that is wore and blunted over. And what it's doing is showing up on you because there's an angle there that the sun can reflect. Where here, there's no angle. It's the top edge and it's the cutter edge underneath. So, obviously, if you look at the comment sections of my video, I'm not good enough to get a sponsor for this. But if anybody's watching this, don't be afraid to spend the 40 bucks on this. It's pretty slick. I hope this helped a little bit, and maybe if there's enough interest, we can go through a sharpening a whole chain. I do have a couple other videos that, hey look, white-tailed deer and turkeys. I have a couple other videos that do go in depth on explaining how the chain works. So thanks for watching. Hope it helps. Let me know.